Hi, welcome. This is Matt from Fermentors. Today's guest, we have Alex from Saloon Door. He's the head brewer here. And today's topic is going to be about simple recipes and brewing of simple recipes. What are you drinking today, Alex?
Today I have got our Dunkel. It is like a simple traditional German recipe. This is actually the second time I've made this one. I really liked how it turned out the first time, so I didn't change anything for the second time.
Right.
It's light, it's easy, it's 5%. It's got big flavor without being a big beer. And it's kind of my favorite beer on that wall right now.
You know, so I had that beer not too long ago. In fact, I had about 2 or 3 of them while I was here. That's a really good beer.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I brought my Dunkel here and my recipes to compare, and we'll go over those later. But it'll be kind of cool to taste test that Dunkel back to back and see not necessarily who's the winner. It's just
I mean, like, Dunkel is an old favorite style of mine. You know, lots of Dunkels are great. And you don't have to be better than someone else's Dunkel to be a good Dunkel.
No. And today I'm drinking the cookie dough brown ale.
Oh, yeah, that is a fun one. We do lots of wild and crazy stuff back there. Lewis and I are the two-man crew in the back, and it is... it's a bit of a field day when we get to doing our creative stuff. Like, we have our big batches that we make full sizes of, and they are set flavors that we've honed in. But every now and then we get the opportunity to do a throwdown, and it's like, all right, well, what do we got here? What can we do that's fun? What can we make 5 gallons of and throw it on a Thursday, and boom, it's gone by the weekend.
And you don't have to worry about it, kind of deal. If it moves quickly.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not great, there's only 5 gallons of it.
Exactly.
I've never made anything here that I've like straight up hated, which I've been kind of lucky to do, knock on wood.
Right.
But we've been pretty lucky that every single time we make something, there's somebody who loves it, which is great. It's one of the really rewarding things about brewing beer, or really doing any kind of craft, is making something that you put your effort into and then somebody enjoys it.
I'm gonna tell you, like, you can smell like the cookie dough on the aroma front, and you can taste a little bit of it, but I think that brown ale is pretty solidly there in the cookie doughs. The secondary flavor.
The brown ale, it's one of those beers that has more character to it, and so when you're going to add anything, you end up having to add quite a bit to overcome it, which you don't always want to do. Like, I like that brown ale, and I like the way it comes across. And so when you get the cookie dough and the aroma, but not all of it on the flavor, it's fine, because it's a good beer on its own.
So recipe style points.
Yeah.
Which one is probably easier, the Dunkel or the brown? Do you feel like?
Ooh. I probably am going to have to go with the Dunkel on this one, even though it is a lager, and lagers can be a bit tricky. The biggest reason behind that is that the Dunkel just includes fewer ingredients. Like when we sit down and make recipes, we started off from Josh's homebrew days. Josh is our chief beer officer. He was the original brewmaster, and he has since stepped back to do more admin stuff and do more stay-at-home dad kind of stuff, while I took over as head brewer. And so a lot of recipe creation has shifted from all of his brainchildren to now more of them, to pretty much all of them on that wall have at least some of my influence, if not a lot of it. And one of the bigger markers you can tell in that, if you just look at our recipes, is that Josh came from the school of I'm gonna throw lots of different things in there because I like all of them, and I come from the school of I'm gonna throw these specific things in there because I want that character and that character and that character, and I don't want to use too little, otherwise I'm not gonna find it. And it also makes it easier on the big scale, because I do things by the 55-pound bag, and I don't want to break open a bag for 10 pounds.
Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah.
It's probably a little bit more economically friendly too, from that standpoint, especially on that kind of scale as well, because you don't have to take 10 pounds out of a 55-pound bag for some just color adjustment.
Which is something that you can very easily do on the homebrew scale, because you're pulling it, 1 ounce at a time from a hopper.
Yeah. Exactly. So before we get really deep into the subject of the simplicity of recipe development and simple brewing, as far as that goes, can you give us a little bit backstory of how you became the head brewer of Saloon Door?
Yeah, so my origins in beer go back to being a longtime assistant homebrewer. My dad homebrewed for a while. When I got asked to come up in here, it was before we had anything here, and so I was going over to Josh's house and we were homebrewing there, doing the final piloting of all of the recipes that would eventually become the opening set at Saloon Door. I was actually about to start doing my own homebrewing when I got the call from my cousin, who's one of the 4 founding partners, and was like, hey, me and my buddies are opening a brewery and only one of us knows how to make any beer. Do you want to come be the other guy who knows how to make beer? And I was like, yeah, I do want to do that. And so I come over here, I meet everyone, I meet Josh, and they're all like, yeah, this is great, this is gonna work. Go over to Josh's house, homebrew with him, because we're still working on getting everything built. And so I went over and did that, and my first batch that I was a primary influence on was commercial, and my first solo batch was commercial. So I kind of skipped a lot of homebrewing and went straight to commercial, which is kind of fun.
That's pretty awesome. I'm sure not a whole lot of head brewers or higher ups in the small craft industry anyways can say they skipped that whole deal, But you have it in your blood though too, because you helped your dad and all that as well. How old were you when you helped your dad homebrew?
So I was helping my dad homebrew when I was in my early 20s. Cool. I got started here at 26, and 2 years ago I became head brewer at 29.
Nice. Right.
Yeah, or 30. I forget how old I am sometimes.
Once you hit that 3-0, it doesn't matter anymore.
I've been 30 for the last 2 or 3 years, and I'm going to be 30 for the next 2 or 3 years. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. So you transitioned into the head brewer. Are there any recipes that are 100% just yours, straight from coming into existence?
Yeah, even before I became head brewer, when we were coming out with the recipes that followed the initial batch that we started with, I was already becoming a heavy influence on Josh on how we were building our recipes. And so the very second version of our pale ale, which we released 4 or 5 months after we opened, was largely my reinvention of Josh's pale ale. The ESB was 100% mine, that I actually adapted from my dad's homebrew ESB.
Nice.
And Josh looked at me and was like, yeah, let's do it. And then going from there, just recipes that we released, after we opened throughout have had at least some of my influence on them. And then when we actually started doing our really branching out new stuff, is pretty much 100% my creation, with Josh and Lewis, my assistant brewer, as the sounding board and pitching ideas with me kind of stuff. So our Belgian series that we ran, the Blonde, the IPA, the Tripel, and the Quad, the lager series that we ran, starting with the Kima, the Dunkel, the Vienna, and finishing up with our first true lager Oktoberfest. We were kind of cheating a little bit on the earlier ones, using a hybrid strain, but we started getting into real lagers, because that was one of the things I wanted to do. I love Belgians, I love lagers, doing a lot of that stuff. Those are largely my recipes. And the Texas Coast IPA series, the base malt bill for all of those is the same, and it's largely based on what I wanted to see in my preferred style of IPA, which is yellow, clear, and tropical hops, kind of a mix between the West Coast and the East Coast. So yeah, that's kind of it. There a lot of stuff on that board is at least somewhat mine, and a number of things on the board are largely mine.
That's gotta feel like an awesome accomplishment.
It is pretty cool. It's nice to be able to come in here and look at that board and see a lot of stuff that I've made, and then I get to see people come in and they try stuff and like, oh man, that's awesome. And it's like I don't need that. It's like but I love hearing it every time. It's great.
But it's just nice
I like what I make, and other people don't have to. Like everyone's got their own flavor palette. I know plenty of people that come in and they try something like, oh, that's not really mine, because there's lots of stuff on that wall that I really enjoy a 4-ounce pour of it, but I cannot go pints of it. But we have customers that love it, and they go pint for pint for pint. I'm like, you do you, man. I can't do that.
Right. Yeah. Well, once you kind of get over that whole like kind of snobbery, I guess, or whatever, you realize, man, as long as it's a cold beer, like cool.
It's about enjoying it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So can I have Tasty AF's recipe?
Tasty AF's recipe. So. Man, that is.
I'm just joking. I know I put you on the spot. That
is not one that I have as memorized as I should for how many times we brewed it. But largely it comes down to Maris Otter, flaked oats and barley, some chocolate malt. Trying to remember what like browns or stuff we do. I don't remember that. And you nitro it, you hit it with peanut butter and chocolate, and it's gold.
Is it a simple recipe?
We have simplified it. The initial version we made was one of Josh's homebrew announce that kind of recipes, and as we made it on the commercial scale, we were doing a lot of partial bags of stuff to fit his exact percentages, and then. We thought it was going to be a novelty of a beer, right? It was a peanut butter chocolate milk stout. It was on nitro. It was going to be, oh, cool, that's really nice, but I'm going to have the IPA. But no, this beer blew up. It was wild. It actually won the Beer Tasting Houston March Madness 2 years in a row, the first 2 years we were open, which was bananas. I didn't even know that we had been entered into this competition until we won the first round the first time. We got a lot of congratulatory messages about making it to the Sweet 16 or something. We're like, what?
What are you talking about? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. It was really awesome, and we ended up making that I was doing 2 batches of that every single month. It was wild how much we were making that beer. And so I really should have it a little bit more memorized than I do.
So because you were brewing it twice a month.
We were brewing it all the time.
What's the gallons that you're putting out a month?
So our batch system is 10 barrel, which is 310 gallons every single batch. I was doing a 20 of this to sometimes even a 40 of this every month. It was a lot. It became a lot of our production. But as we needed to do it that often, it was just Josh and I for those first few years. We didn't pick up Lewis until a while later. But we're sitting there and we keep getting these weird partial bags left over where you cut open the one bag and you do it for one batch, and then you use part of it for the next batch, and then you've got this weird partial bag that isn't enough for the third batch, and we got to a point where we got tired of that. We were looking at the percentages. We're like, you know what, we can scoot this into that and make that all one and make it nice, even full and half bags. And that's what we did. After about the first year, we got that settled into a simpler, much more manageable recipe on the scale that we needed it to be, to where we would do it and we wouldn't end up with weird amounts that would end up changing because we had an extra 3 pounds left in the bag, or we were 4 pounds short on the next one. No, we cut that, got it to a standardized size, and that's how we ran it from then on.
Yeah, because at that point, then what does it matter by the time you've brewed it 7 times? Then, okay, well now you've got a full bit of that grain, but now that grain's a year and a half old.
Yeah, and you've been cycling it back and forth between buckets with their seals on there, and it's like sometimes you end up with a stack of them and you don't know where 7 of your pounds went. They're in the bottom of that stack. Yeah.
Right. and the less that you can cut around on stuff like that too, I'm sure the better, because you run the whole contamination. What's what? It gets lost and everything.
It becomes much more manageable when you simplify it into things that you have it by the orders of magnitude you're working on.
So we haven't really had too much crosstalk off camera or anything, so I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here. Simplest recipe that's the tastiest right off the top of your head. What do you got?
Oh, Kima, 100%. Like, that beer's got basically nothing to it. And that's one of the reasons why I love it. That one and like ESB, like these, I'm going to list off a lot of my recipes because I'm the one who makes the very simple recipes.
Right.
But like, you know, Kima is Pilsner, corn, rice, a little bit of hops, and lager yeast. You know, the ESB is Maris, crystal, some golden syrup, some EKG, English yeast. Like, it's, I like my recipes that showcase, like our pale ale, either the Painted Wagon or the Panhandler, the hazy or the West Coast version of it. They're highly similar because we adapted our West Coast into the hazy when we started getting into hazies. But most of what we adapted was the salt profile on it. The grain bill is largely the same. It's, you know, it's base, it's 2-row Pilsner or Maris, whichever one you've got on hand. And then like not much else. You throw in the hops and you throw them in late and you just get yellow beer with great hop character. Like that's really what I enjoy, is when I can get a beer and I can taste it and I taste exactly what it was I was going for. That there's no, like, you know, mixed and muddled complexities in there that are all too subtle to parse out. Like, there are some beers that do very great with those, but they are harder recipes to know how to put together the way you want them to be, and they are harder recipes to really get the nuance out of them, because you kind of have to have a trained palate to pick out more subtle stuff, and not everyone has one. I specifically have one because when we were getting opened, I had the opportunity to take a beer judging, tasting, and sensory panel course, and it was great because I got to try a lot of different beers. I got to have an educated person with a sophisticated palate explain everything I was experiencing, and so I got to put all those markers down between what I tasted, what I smelled, and what words I could now associate with them. And it's really great because it's helped me a lot in, one, my ability to judge beer whenever I get asked to do a judging, but also in my ability to judge my own beer when I'm trying to either put together a recipe or I'm trying to tweak something. I know what it is I'm looking at, and so I know what it is I'm trying to adjust about it. And it's also given me an appreciation for the simpler recipes, because when you don't have 14 different things going on, when you've only got 3 or 4, it becomes much easier to parse them out. And when you're talking to someone about your simpler recipe and you mention something, they immediately get it, because like it's easy to pick out 3 or 4 flavors.
Yeah.
And it's really great to see their joy in it when they can get exactly what it is you were trying to do.
When everybody's operating on that same threshold, that same page of, I myself, I haven't been brewing for a super long time or anything like that. Well, I have, but I haven't. So I did a lot of extract kits, and then I started switching over to all grain kits that other people had constructed. And I started, like, in the last 2 years, starting to write my own recipes. And so I didn't really have a very good palate, so I've been trying to get a better one and taste some things. And so the judging event that you and I met at, you know, like by that point in time, like I felt like I've started to shift into where if someone says, "Oh, I taste mango in this" or whatever, I can say, "Oh, okay, yeah, I see what that is." Or you know, I know there's a lot of that, like, chemical compounds that people say, "Oh, well, that's the pineapple flavor that you taste," or whatever, you know, and like I don't know all those compounds by
yeah, and
hand,
you don't have to, because I don't know half of them, but I do know what it is I smell or what it is I taste, and I can associate it with something.
Exactly.
And then I can always look up what the sophisticated version of that is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. All right, well, let's take a quick break, get a reset on our glasses, and you know, go use the restroom and all that, and we'll come right back. All right, so for this next segment, I brought some homebrew, and we've got my recipes that I brought, and I'll put the recipes in the description here so everybody else can kind of view what we're doing. So I brought 2 homebrews. One's a Dunkel's Bock, and the other one is a Belgian Dubbel. You've had a little bit of time to review the recipes and kind of see what I was doing. Do you have a preference from seeing either one, and like more curious about one versus the other? Or?
So probably I would want to go to this Dunkel. I mean, I'm just coming off of my Dunkel here, and so my palate is kind of already set for Dunkel flavors. Things aren't going to get like too wild and off, because drinking order actually does matter when it comes to tasting. If you go from something heavy to something light, and it doesn't even have to be light, it just has to be lighter, and it can like be like water.
Right. You don't want to drink an IPA and then go and drink a stout and then go drink a blonde ale, because
like you can go from big flavor to big flavor. The thing you don't want to do is go from big flavor to a lighter version of the same flavor.
Right.
Because like the most glaring example I remember was in the tasting course we were doing. It was porters and stout day, right? And we do these like, you know, 4 at a time, whatever. You start with one and you leave a little bit in the cup when you move on to the next one. And so you start with the first one, and it's some porter, and you drink it, and it tastes big, it's bold, it's got all this flavor. By the time you get to the 4th one, you're drinking that one, you really enjoy it, and then the instructor's like, all right, now let's go back to the first one. You drink that, and it's water. This was the big, bold porter you just had not half an hour ago, and it's water.
Right.
So that's one of the things that can be really that. So
do they use commercial examples during?
Yeah,
that?
No, it's all commercial, and so it's all stuff that is very like it's
everyday stuff.
It's very, you know, standardized. You know what you're getting into when you open it.
Okay.
You don't run into like.
So if you get in the store porter stout, you're probably gonna have a Guinness, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, that was one of the ones that was like really. It makes it really obvious in there. So like what helps is when you have some sort of palate cleanser between them. If you're going to like similar-ish but still different styles, and especially if you're going in the wrong direction for tasting quality. But yeah, let's get into these. Which one of these is the Dunkel?
So the Dunkel is the silver cap.
Silver cap. All right, cool. Putting on our judging hats, got a good fill there. Let's see how well it pops.
All right.
Good pop there. All right, yeah, cool. And let's get a pour. Yeah, nice. Got some head there.
So a note about this, I don't know if you saw in the notes, it's bottle conditioned.
Yeah, that's why I was trying to be careful about.
I don't care about
the pour
that. I'm good.
Well, it does affect it if you're getting extra stuff in the glass. But yeah,
so
you can see that there.
The Dunkel.
Right. Cool. Ooh, it's got a nice aroma to it. Yeah, this is definitely on the fruitier side of Dunkel's versus mine. Mine is a little bit more roast. We actually weren't entirely sure if we were making a Dunkel when we put that recipe together. I was just putting together a dark lager because the way I build recipes is I go and I look around at a bunch of other recipes for the style that I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
And that gives me a baseline for like, okay, so this is kind of generally in the area of how you make this recipe. And then I'll pick out stuff from there that I know that I like. I'll leave stuff out that I know that I don't like, or that, you know, it doesn't really fit what I'm trying to do, either because there's too little of it in the recipe that I looked at or whatever. And so like this was this was, between being a Dunkel and a Schwarzbier, as far as what we thought it might turn out as when we put the recipe together, because we didn't need it to be a Dunkel, but we wanted to make some dark lager.
Right.
And then by the time we got through fermentation, we were looking at its color, we were smelling it, we were tasting it. I was like, all right, this is definitely not roasty enough to be a Schwarzbier, so it's a Dunkel.
Right.
But yeah, this has a lot of the character that reminds me of, like, when you're going to a German restaurant or when you're doing some sort of Oktoberfest festival. This is the kind of like German kind of yeasty character that you expect, the esters and all that stuff. Okay, yeah. This is definitely on the browner side of Dunkels, which is not bad. I really like it. It's dramatically different from mine. Mine is a little bit on the roastier side.
Yeah.
Mine is the one that leans toward Schwarzbier.
So we have our homebrew club here.
Yeah.
Our meetings, and I turned in my Dunkel for the competition, our internal competition, and I think you guys had just put yours on tap. And I had just had mine the day before, and so I was like, I'm gonna try that and see how close I came. and I was kind of upset. I was like, so this is a Dunkel. Like, what kind of trash did I turn in? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you remember what the feedback you got on it was?
So after kind of just talking to some people, everybody said it's a little on the thin side. Okay. Everybody thought that it was a little bit more on the maltier side than it should be. For whatever it's worth, I really like the beer. I think I would brew it again. There's a couple issues that I ran into that I made notes on the recipe. I had a stuck sparge. I had a stuck mash. We double decocted it, and so it was just a long trying brew day on this one.
Yeah.
But I don't think I necessarily hit the Dunkel like head on this deal. Yeah. But I feel proud about it. I think it's a really good beer. So now that you've had a chance to taste it, you've had a chance to look over it, what do you think that you would simplify my recipe that I've wrote here?
So one of the things I immediately noticed is that you not only double decocted it, you also have Melanoiden Malt in here.
Yes.
Which is an interesting choice, because Melanoiden Malt is supposed to be how you get away with not decocting at all.
Yes. So I was really, really worried that I wasn't going to be able to pull everything that I needed for the beer. Yeah. Into it with just double decocting. And maybe I beat myself up a little too hard on that. As a homebrewer that's not really knows every brew style or whatever, everything, when I meet a challenge or whatever, or if I'm just trying to review a certain style, I'm like you, I go look and see what's available, what's everybody else doing. Okay, these things I'm familiar with, these are the tastes that I'm trying to chase. I'm not very familiar with that. I don't know what that is, so I'm going to roll that back a little bit. Yeah. And then like the Melanoiden Malt kind of kept coming up as like for single infusion stuff, and I was just really worried that I wasn't going to be able to pull those deep, dark, sugar-rich like melanoidins from being double decocted, and so that's why I did it.
Yeah, I mean, like that's kind of the point of the malt, is to get you those rich and complex flavors. The thing I noticed about it though is you only have it at 1.5%, which is very little.
I wanted just enough because I knew I was going to pull some from the being double decocted. Yeah. But I wanted just enough for insurance. And I felt like at that percentage, it was there. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, like, so I have noticed that, like, if you're at the 1.5% level or even lower, it's hard to taste it.
Right. Might as well be without it then.
Yeah, you might as well go with that. Like, if you're gonna go with it, I would put it in at a substantial enough amount that it reaches outside of that statistical error margin.
At that point in time, what percentage would that be? Like 5%?
I really wouldn't do anything less than 5%. I think 5% is a good mark of like, it usually hits the threshold on what it is you're looking for. The only time I would use less than that is if what you're going for is color rather than character. Like, like on my red, I use, you know, that 1.5–2% of chocolate malt. Not because I want to have this like roasty character in my red, but because I've got all of these light malts in there and I want it to come out that like nice ruby color. And that, you know, 1.5–2% of 300 Lovibond chocolate does it. It gets it that color.
Easily.
Yeah. Without imparting a whole lot of character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha. So you would probably just drop that and then you would rebrew it and just see if you end up with those rich melanoidin.
I mean,
characters,
I feel like this beer is going to taste pretty much the same whether or not you had that melanoidin malt in there at the level that you've got it in there.
I gotcha.
But I'm also one of those guys that's of the opinion that you cannot over decoct a beer. I mean, like you can, because you can make it so that your mash is unfermentable, but. I mean, like if you're going for that decoction character, if you want those flavors in there, like, you know, it's hard to go overboard on that. And so, you know, either do your double decoction, because like double decoction even, like you are guaranteeing that you're going to get character out of it, because you've not only done it the once, but you've done it the twice.
So, so we, and I guess really honestly, like from my opinion, with all the problems that we had during brew day, I kind of feel like maybe the melanoidin saved our bacon just a little bit, possibly. Like you said, at that point, that low percentage, who really knows? Yeah. Stuck mash, stuck sparge. We did have problems achieving the rest during the step mashes. You know, because we were taking that decocted mash and trying to bring it back and add that temperature back up. And I mean, like every step part of the mash, like we missed those temperature marks. And it wasn't like by a degree or two. I'd have to go back and look at the actual notes for this brew day. I tried to put down most of them here. But I think it was, you know, like sometimes up by almost 5 degrees. And so like, you know, do we have all those full enzymes working with us, for us, during that mash, you know? So
I'm not super versed on step mashing because I never did it on the homebrew scale, and we don't do it on the commercial scale. But I've noticed lots of batches that do single infusion, or even single infusion with decoction that we've done with my dad and stuff. Like I don't feel like all of those specific rest steps are necessary. Modern malts are very well modified now. They let you get away with a whole lot, and they don't need all of those extra steps that are in your older homebrew recipes that have those like different protein rest levels. Like, because in your mash you have a temperature range where your enzymes are going to work and where they're going to give you the conversion to the sugar content that you want. And so trying to, you know, mash down here at 122, you're not converting anything. And then, so like you've got all that time that you're spending in there where you're not doing a whole lot except spending time. You know, once
you're being historical accurate though at that point, because some beliefs of thought is either you do it the traditional historical way, or you're kind of doing it the cheater route or whatever, like with Quake or, you know, these other measures that we can do. And I agree with you that with the modern day malt, we're not using the traditional historical malts that we were, you know, 300, 400, 500 years ago, or beginning of time basically. You know, we've been able to modify things for better or for worse.
Yeah, and I mean, like you can still make a great beer doing all these steps, but I think that these steps aren't entirely necessary to still make a great beer. You can do, you can look at some more modern versions of these recipes that have easier steps to pull off, and they will make the same beer that you made pretty much. And so like I don't know that you got a lot of problems out of that. Like that probably was fine for everything. Really what happens when you're sticking is largely either because of some choice in the grain bill that is an extra sticky grain that didn't have the necessary rice holes in there to open up that grain bed,
such as or rye.
Yeah, or you just pulled too hard when you're pulling off the bottom and things compress a little too much. But like you can always go in and unstick your mash. It just takes more time and it loses some efficiency.
Yes.
Yeah.
So also too during the Dunkels, I don't know if you saw in the notes, but I missed the starting gravity, and so I had to boil just a little bit longer.
Yeah, and that'll help
cheat. Yeah,
that'll help impart even more of those decocted flavors, kind of stuff.
Those melanoidins too, and so like I was feeling good about it. Like I still had some leadway. So I guess at the bottom or end of the day, with my Bock versus your Bock, they're totally different Bocks.
Yeah,
but they're both Bocks, right?
Yeah, it still comes out a beer that is within the style and it tastes good. Like I enjoy it. It's a nice beer.
I have a German friend. He came over and I shared it with him, and so like he's first generation American. Yeah, and so he's like, dude, if you made beer like this every day and sold it, I would buy it every day. And I'm like, well, thanks, but I don't operate at that level. Like I got a day job and kids and like all this other stuff. Like thank you. It was kind of like, I guess, like your deal with all your recipes up on the wall. It's like, yes, like that's I'm slowly but surely getting better kind of deal. Yeah. So cheers and thank you for your input there.
Yeah, this is good stuff. All right, and I think that Dunkel is different enough from mine that it is palate cleansed to get into a Dubbel, which I am excited about.
So let's do a quick reset and we'll come right back with the Dubbel. All right, and now we're back with the Dubbel here. You want to go ahead and open us up on this one, and I'll give you some backstory on this one. Yeah. So this is actually like 2.0 on this. It's a revenge brew.
Revenge brew.
Yeah. So
did it not go so well for you the first time?
No, it did not. So the first time I entered a competition, and it was Saws here in Texas, homebrew competition. And they kept hitting it for not complex enough. And so like I had just started writing recipes and everything, and I was like, I'll show you complex. And I think I kind of nailed some complexity. I think I got the
that is some nice color.
The color right. I think I got the carbonation and the head right.
Yeah, nice big, really carbonated head. Oh yeah, and that is Belgian. Yeah, you can taste it in there.
So before, I don't know how much of the notes that you read on this one, but just looking over the basic recipe, there is pretty much a metric shit ton of things going on here.
Oh yeah, there's a lot. Okay, so the first thing I notice is that it's a lot of grain choices, which is not a bad thing. You've once again got like these 3.5%, and then all the way down here, this chocolate rye at 0.7, but that looks more like the color edition.
That was a color adjustment for sure, sure.
Which like it turned out real nice.
Oh, I think it's a beautiful beer.
Yeah.
I think I hit the color and, like I said, the carbonation in the head just right. I don't know if you see it there. The toasted Bohemian floor malt.
Toasted Bohemian floor, yeah.
I took that malt and I toasted it myself at home.
Okay.
To try to get like some of that kind of like melanoiden, like but toasty kind of characteristics and there.
That's really nice.
I decocted this one too, which is quote unquote out of style.
Yeah.
But like you said though, you can never over decocted beer.
Yeah, I mean, like if what you want is rich, complex flavor, that's one of the points of decoction. Like, you know, the OG point of decoction is to get your mash up to temperature, because, you know, there's only so many ways to apply heat to your mash when you have limited technology.
Right.
And one of the ways to do it is to take some of it off and boil it, because boiling is a known temperature. Then you can add it back.
Yep, slowly but surely.
Yeah.
Yep. So this was one of those long brew days for me too. I had so many problems with this. This was the first time that I used my cooler mash tun, and then I had a pump, and it didn't occur to me to have a sparge arm, and so I had all kinds of problems going on that day. But really, like, this is worth it. So this beer is almost a year old, and I think that the character's kind of been developing slowly but surely. I don't know if you saw my yeast choice here, and what I did specially for this yeast. So the base yeast that I have on this, I had brewed my original Dubbel with. Yeah. And so then my brew partner last year was like, you know, Matt, if you take the yeast cake off a Dubbel, you can brew a quad. And so, like, I hurried up and threw together a quad recipe, and then so then I saved some yeast cake from that in the mason jar. Well, once I got my report back from my original Dubbel that was brought in, it said, you know, complexity. So I did a bunch of research, and there was Trappist ales. Yeah. And so I stole some yeast out of those bottles, saved it, mixed it, blended it, made a yeast starter, big old pitch.
So this is a generation 3+?
3+ plus Trappist ale yeast in this, and I think that it brings it to another level. There's so much in there. There's so much going on in this thing, but I don't think that it's necessarily overwhelming. How do you feel about it?
So there is a lot going on in here, and there's more than you would expect just reading this initial recipe sheet, because there is, and it's not wrong or off, there is a touch of sour in here. Yeah. And with the added thing on there that it is a third generation of yeast after a quad, and also plus Trappist yeast off the bottom of bottles that has been, you know, mixed together. And I think you said you what was it? Started it up. Yeah. Yeah. Like got a nice big healthy pitch out of it. How old was that pitch off of the quad?
So off the quad, it was probably somewhere right around, let me see here. I brewed that on 9/25/21. I want to say, I think at that point in time, that yeast from the quad was anywhere between 3 and 6 months old.
So after the quad, 3 to 6 months. Okay.
Yes.
How did you keep that yeast healthy?
So I put it in a mason jar, a sanitized jar, and then I put it into my refrigerator. I keep my refrigerator pretty cool. The first couple of days, I left the jar just a little loose, so that way if it needed to
degas,
yeah. And so then after that, then I just drained a little bit off the fluid to where there was like probably a little bit less than a 1/4 inch of fluid on the top of that yeast cake. And so then I did a small starter, like probably I think 10-20 gravity, I think, for a couple of days, and it flocked out. Okay. So I decanted that, and then I put that back in the refrigerator, and then I took another flask out. And this is kind of where things, I was like, oh, this is either going to make it or break it. That Trappist ale, those 4 bottles that I poured into a mason jar similar to that. I was like, good luck, guys. And so I did a 10-15, 10-20 starter on that. And it flocked out. So I was like, okay, here we go. We'll fix it. And so I did 50-50 on that, and I was like, if you were able to get them both started up, then you had some healthy yeast there. That is a wild experiment I've got it all on film.
In pitching, which I love it. It's great, and it made a good beer. So that's Like, that's where a lot of that really wild character comes from, is that choice in how you did the yeast, which is very on point for a Belgian. Belgians are all about
the yeast
the ridiculous yeast that Belgians have, because Belgium just has a great environment where its natural yeast produces wonderful flavors, and it's really complex, it's rich, it's got a lot of range in there. It's like, San Francisco sourdough. Like it's the place where its natural environment produces a great yeast. Yeah. Belgian ale yeast is the exact same way. It's just so good. And so yeah, this is where a lot of that character comes from, and it's really nice.
It's almost like a fruit punch to the palate, in my opinion, because you have just an explosion of kind of like the raisin, but I pick up almost like peach.
From it's a year old, and you can taste some nice oxidation on there. It wasn't a lot, because when I popped that, it still had a good crisp pop. It poured a nice head, so you didn't have a lot of oxygen get back in there. It's just the natural oxygen in the environment. It allowed for some aging to happen. It allowed for some character development. You get those things like that raisin. You get that touch of tartness, because it's not like a sour like it's spoiled. It's a tartness
like the cherry deal. And so I kind of debated for a little bit about throwing some wood on this thing, and I almost kind of wish that I would have done a split, pulled some from the fermenter, put some on some wood, see what happens.
Just get some spirals or something.
But so I ended up waxing some of these for long-term storage. So it's going to be a good comparison of what's to come with this beer.
Yeah.
And so I saved yeast cake from this brew, and I have some yeast cake left from the quad still left.
Okay.
So if you want to do some playing around, just let me know.
That sounds really interesting.
You might want to segregate it from the rest of your brew house just in case. But
I can't do commercial scale with that. No, right. I got to be a lot safer.
Yeah.
When I experiment, I take baby steps. That's how my experimentation goes.
So I've had quite a bit of your beers here, and really, to tell you the truth, it's awesome now that I'm able to share some of my beers with you.
Yeah, and this is some cool stuff. This is what I love about homebrew, is it lets you try things, and it lets you try things that are just buck wild.
Yeah.
And it turns out well more often than not, because beer is very forgiving. Beer is a wonderful craft. It's a wonderful hobby, because there's only a handful of things you can do to actually ruin it. Most of the time you're going to make something that you can like. Sometimes you're going to make something that is lovely. A handful of times you're going to make something that's
How many dumpers have you had?
So I have luckily never had to dump an entire batch.
You should stop right there and not talk about it ever again.
Yeah.
Because I started bragging about that shit and I had to.
No, I'm not bragging. I am praising A-Gear and all the beer gods that I have never had to dump an entire batch. We've come close. We have made some really wild mistakes. We're only 7 years old. There's only so much experience you have. But this place teaches you a lot about brewing, especially when you brew as often as we do. And we've learned a lot of things about just how forgiving beer can be. Cali is a superstar of a yeast. You can accidentally start cold crashing that thing and get it down way below any temperature you're supposed to be fermenting at, and you can realize it the next day, turn those jackets off, and hope and pray that it warms up, and it will kick back off and finish fermenting your beer, and it will do it without adding too many extra characters to it, which is really nice. We got really lucky on that one, because we were that close to having to dump an entire 10-barrel batch.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's
an expensive mistake.
That is a very expensive mistake.
Yeah. And timely too.
Oh yeah, because it's a 6-hour brew day plus now all the time we've spent with fermenting, with getting all the stuff clean, with ordering all that stuff, like it is a trek and a half to make a beer. And so when you have to dump a batch, it's not just, oh, I spent all that money, it's, oh, I spent all that time and now I'm this many days behind on a beer that I kind of needed.
it's a double hit at that point.
Yeah.
It's a double hit.
Yeah, because it's not just lost revenue, it's also spent cost.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, so we've talked a little bit about simplifying recipes on my thing.
Yeah.
The Dubbel. Where would you simplify anything? Do you think that everything that I did was worth it here? So
all of these malts that you have here at the 3.6% range, you've got some Munich 10, you've got some Special B, you've got some kind of 2 SRM wheat. You've got
hoping for the head retention on that one.
Okay, yeah, head retention. Yeah, that makes sense on that one. But like, this 3.6 on Munich 10 is a light enough malt that I almost consider it a base. So if you're gonna use it, I would use like tasteable amounts of it, because it does have some great character in it. And I do use Munich 10 on plenty of stuff that I want to get character that's on the lower end of the color spectrum, and that is in that flavor profile that I want. Those light biscuity kind of flavors and all that stuff. And so I would either, if I'm not considering that a base malt, I would definitely bump it up.
Or do away with it and go take the toasted Bohemian floor malt or a floor malt and bump it up a little bit more.
Yeah, so this toasted Bohemian, if what you're doing is getting a lot of character out of this toasted Bohemian floor malt, I would just turn this Munich 10 into more toasted Bohemian floor malt, because that's where you're gonna get the character you were looking for. This flaked rye, it's a good builder on the body, but at 3.6% it's not a whole lot. If I wanted to come out thicker, I'd go ahead and use a little bit more of it. I use flake stuff at the 1 to 2 to 3 bags per batch, and my batches are 14 bags.
Right.
So it's a sizable percentage.
Right.
Yeah, and this Special B, I love Special B, but at 3.6%, I don't know how much of it you're actually getting. Right. I would go ahead and just use a little bit more and get a little bit more character out of it. Yeah.
Maybe sub in some more of that candy syrup there towards the bottom.
Oh yeah, that candy syrup. Were you just using that candy syrup to bring down the size of your mash but still get more sugar?
A little bit of that. I was hoping for a little bit more of the color and pour, and really those fruity things that we want from the Belgian side of the darker beers.
I love Belgian dark candy sugar. It's great, and I use it definitely to impart character while also bumping up the OG.
Right. Yeah, because you can spend a little bit more on syrup and spend a little less on the grain side, or have a little.
Well, I can spend some money on some syrup, and I can go from having so many points out of my mash, and I can get a bigger beer with more volume.
Right.
Because that my trade-off on my trade-off in my kettle, because I've only got the one size and I've only got the one size mash tun, is I have pretty much a set max on points I can get out of my mash tun. And so if I want to get more points, I either need to have less liquid or I need to pour in some sugar.
I gotcha.
And so that's how I get an extra barrel out of my 10-barrel system, where like if I did it straight mash, I'd get 7, but because I'm using sugar, I can get 8.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I find the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I do everything on a 5-gallon scale.
Yeah.
And so I have a 10-gallon kettle. Sometimes there's a little overflow between the grains and the water, and you know, your ratio for mash water and to grain absorption and all that. And so sometimes you've got to use those fermentable sugars to kind of make up the difference, and hopefully import those additional benefits.
And the thing, like, it's not at all like wrong to do, but like just noticing this even split here on Bohemian 4 malted pills and 2-row pills for base grains. Like, you know, if you can only get half and half for your base grains, it's fine. But it's easier to remember. It's easier to build if you just have the one base grain. And if you wanted to get like the character out of one base grain, go ahead and just use the entirety of it as your base.
So for this, and this is kind of when I was still like noob writing my own recipes a little bit, you know, to be honest. I think if I had to do it all over again and rewrite this recipe, I would probably kind of, like you said, simplify it and probably drop the Pilsner and just go straight for the Bohemian floor malted, and hopefully import even more of those characteristics that you would gain from that grain into this beer. It was just like, what is everybody else doing? I know I like Pilsner malt. I know I like the Bohemian, and I know that they play well together to some extent. You know, let's build the recipe out like that. Now that I know a little bit more and a little bit more different, like I think that I would probably just drop the Pilsner and just go full on floor malted.
I mean, like, kitchen sinks are fun to brew. If you're sitting there,
or they're hectic to brew.
Well, if you're sitting there and looking at the stuff that you've got because you've already bought it, and you're like, well, what have I got in here? Well, I have enough of the right grains that I can make a beer out of this. Let's see what it makes. That's actually how we made our very first pumpkin saison. It was a bit of a kitchen sink because we were like, you know, we've got this saison yeast going in the saison right now. It's coming up on fall. Let's, you know, we're not going to do it on Oktoberfest, but let's make a pumpkin beer. And so we order like a bunch of pumpkin puree, and we're looking at the stuff that we already have in the grain room because we're like, okay, so what do we need to order in order to make this a doable beer? And we're looking at all these things we have in the grain room, like, well, we've got some of this, we've got some of that. We're like, well, I kind of like those, and we have kind of enough of that. We've got some of this, and I kind of like that. We've got enough of that, and we're like, we don't really have to order anything. Let's just make it. And it was a lot of fun because it turned out it turned out this really rich, complex, wild pumpkin beer that it sold so well. They asked us to recreate it. We're like, damn it, now we gotta
now we gotta order all that stuff that we had just laying around.
And so we kind of did end up eventually simplifying that. Posted. Let's go ahead and open that door. Hey, we're just wrapping up.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
It's our fault.
We're here too long.
So with that being said, let's do a quick reset on everything, and we'll come back with this and wrap it all up. So quick wrap up on everything, because I know you got some stuff going on here, and I've got to go do some stuff. But keep the recipes simple. What do you think? 3 to 5 grains max?
You know, try to figure out what it is, the flavor you're looking for. If it can be done with 1 grain, do it with 1 grain. You know, try to keep your percentages up into a level where you know you're gonna get some stuff out of it. And like it's the same. It's kind of the same way with hops as well. I know a lot of people love their 7 or 8 hop IPAs. But like at a certain point, you don't have enough of any single hop to get the character out of it, except that it is a hop.
Right. Unless you're trying to make one of those trash coast IPAs, you know, the West Coast, man. They're terrible. Just joking. Man, thank you so much, Alex. I think
Thanks for having me.
I think simple recipes is a complex topic in itself. Like
Yeah.
you can spend literally all day talking about it, and I think that there's still a couple things that we could touch upon here, and I would love to have you back as a continuation on some of this stuff. But I think we got a good foothold on you know, where to go, what to do.
Yeah.
If you're anywhere near the Houston area and you have the opportunity, stop by Saloon Door. Taste some of Alex's beers. They're some of the best around here, and I'm not just saying that because, you know, they were gracious enough to host us here today on this show, but like legitimately, they're some of the best small craft beer brewers around here. And you know, if you got a chance and you're still watching, please like, subscribe, comment below. Check out the recipes that I'll link below. Anytime that you're probably around here, you can, you're very approachable.
Yeah.
Just pull them to the side and say, Alex, I've got a question, and I'm sure he will answer that.
Oh yeah, I always love talking beer. It's pretty good.
It's a pretty fun topic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again, sir. I really appreciate it. And this is Matt from Fermentors. Come check me out on Jaggers Brewing Co. YouTube as well. Bye.